My family skipped my master's graduation and acted like I was the problem. I spent years fighting to earn my master's degree, dreaming of sharing that moment with my family. But when graduation day came, most of them just didn't show up. And when they finally appeared, they treated me like I was the one to blame. I had been waiting for this day for what felt like forever. 2 years of relentless studying, countless sleepless nights and sacrifices I didn't even realize I was making, all leading up to my master's graduation. It was supposed to be one of the happiest, most triumphant moments of my life. I pictured my whole family there, cheering me on, celebrating what I had achieved. My parents, my brother, my aunts, cousins, even grandma, everyone. In the weeks leading up to graduation, the excitement in my household was tangible. My mom had been busy preparing little things, balloons, decorations, food for the after party at the Airbnb we rented. My brother was coordinating logistics, trying to get everyone organized for the big day. It felt like the whole family was involved, and I couldn't have been happier. The day before graduation, we went kayaking together. I'll never forget that morning. It was early spring, the sun just beginning to warm the chilly air. The lake was glassy, calm, reflecting the soft pastel sky. My cousin Rachel, she's 29, had been unusually emotional that day. I saw tears in her eyes more than once, and later she told me she felt frustrated about her own life, about how she wasn't where she thought she'd be at her age. But the kayaking, the laughter, the quiet support, it helped her. By the end, she was smiling again, and for once, I felt like maybe she was okay. After kayaking, my brother texted the whole family in our group chat, telling everyone to meet him and Dad early the next morning at 7:30 a.m. so they could all travel together to the stadium for the ceremony. Mom and I had to leave earlier to get me set up, find the right spot for the robe check-in, all that. That night, I went to bed, feeling a mixture of nerves and joy. This was the moment I'd dreamed of. I'd fought hard for it. But morning came with a strange twist. Instead of everyone gathering like planned, my Aunt Lisa, Rachel's mom, her other daughter, Sarah, Sarah's 2 kids, and Rachel herself sent a message. They said they wouldn't be coming early to meet the family as planned. Instead, they'd meet us directly at the stadium. It struck me as odd, really odd. I mean, this was supposed to be a family event, a celebration. We all wanted to travel together, right? But I shrugged it off. Maybe they had some reason. Maybe they were running late. I needed to focus on myself anyway, getting dressed, making sure my cap and gown were perfect, calming my racing heart. When the ceremony started and I walked out with my classmates, I spotted my mom, grandma, and brother waving at me. Their seats were together in the middle rows. I smiled and waved back. It felt good to see familiar faces. But my eyes immediately caught on something else. The seats all around them were empty. No sign of Rachel, Sarah, or Aunt Lisa. Their entire side of the family was missing. It felt strange, almost painful. I told myself, maybe they're just running late. After the ceremony, I headed back toward the family seats. I waved at Mom again, the same smiles and cheers as before, but the seats beside them remained eerily empty. Later, I caught a glimpse of Aunt Lisa sitting way up in the balcony far from the rest of us. She was with her grandson, but none of the others from her side were anywhere in sight. I thought, at least someone made it. Outside the stadium, the family gathered for photos. I was trying to keep my spirits high, but as I scanned the group, I noticed the absence was even more glaring. "Where's Rachel?" I asked my brother quietly. His face tightened, a look I hadn't seen before. They didn't make it," he said, avoiding my gaze. "We don't know where they are." That was it. No explanation, no apology, just gone. Aunt Lisa had disappeared too. Their side of the family was missing entirely from the pictures. Later, as evening crept in, the catering arrived at the Airbnb for the party we'd planned. Mom, a close friend, and I were there early, setting up, drinking coffee, trying to keep the mood light. I kept glancing at the door, hoping the rest of the family would arrive. At 2 p.m., just as we were starting to eat, the door suddenly burst open. There they were. Rachel, Sarah, her kids, and Aunt Lisa walked in like nothing had happened. Rachel practically ran to me, throwing her arms around me and shouting, "Congratulations!" I hugged her back, but my heart was heavy. I wanted to ask why they missed the ceremony, why no one had reached out. But the words caught in my throat. They carried on with their conversations, ignoring the awkwardness. Not a single word about what happened, not a hint of remorse or explanation. The rest of the party was tense. Rachel kept dominating the conversation, interrupting me and my friend. It felt like she wanted to control everything, maybe even the story of the day itself. As the clock ticked to 5 p.m., we had to leave for a concert we'd planned for the evening. On the drive, their anger simmered beneath my calm facade. Bit by bit, my frustration grew into full-blown rage. At the concert gate, Mom scanned the tickets, while Rachel showed me her new university hat, flashing it proudly. "Do you like my hat?" she asked with a grin. I blinked. "You don't like it?" she pressed. I looked at her straight in the eye. "A hat from the university's graduation that you didn't even attend. That was the spark." Rachel exploded, yelling that they couldn't find parking, that they had no choice. Her arms flailed wildly as she screamed. The rest of the family started to drift away, my brother especially, who looked like he wanted to disappear. Mom jumped in, shouting for everyone to get inside. Rachel, true to her nickname, burst into tears, arms crossed, retreating up the hill with her niece and nephew comforting her. That night, the concert turned out to be a welcome escape, but the damage was done. Rachel ignored me the rest of the trip and laughed loudly whenever jokes were made at my expense. The other family members eventually apologized, but before they left, I confronted Rachel. She cried. She said they had no choice. I asked, "Why didn't you get out of the car and let your sister find parking?" She said, "I'm not just going to leave my sister." Apparently, that made me the idiot for even suggesting it. They even went out to eat at Longhorn Steakhouse after missing my graduation, but they only got salads. That day, I felt completely disrespected. I felt invisible, like my hard work and my moment didn't matter. Whenever I tried to express my hurt, I was met with anger or indifference. I don't understand it. How could my family treat me this way? How could they take my special day and make me feel like I was the problem? That was just the beginning. After graduation day, what I thought would be a milestone marking a new beginning in my life slowly turned into a deep crack in my relationship with my family. The atmosphere that once felt warm and celebratory suddenly became suffocating and tense. Conversations grew shorter, and every interaction seemed charged with unspoken resentment. Rachel, my cousin, who had cried during our kayaking trip, started to show her frustration openly. Every time we were in the same room, I could feel her eyes burning with anger and contempt. There were moments when she deliberately interrupted conversations, dropping subtle jabs that stung more than she probably realized. It was clear she wasn't happy with me, but I couldn't understand why. I kept asking myself what had really happened. Why on earth would she behave that way on what should have been one of my proudest days? And what was worse, why did the rest of the family act like none of this was happening? Their silence cut even deeper. One late afternoon, I decided I couldn't keep avoiding the problem. I picked up my phone and called Rachel, wanting to have a real conversation. I needed answers. I needed closure. "Rachel, can we talk? I feel like things between us have been really tense lately, and I want to understand what's going on." Her voice was cold, almost dismissive. "I don't want to talk," she said bluntly. "You always act like you're the only one who suffers, but I have my own life and problems. You don't know anything about what I've been going through." I hesitated. "You don't know? Then what is it I'm supposed to know?" Silence on the line. Finally, she sighed deeply. "Our family isn't as perfect as you think. There are things I can't talk about, pressures I carry every day. And yeah, I know you're upset about graduation, but it wasn't our fault." I wanted to argue, to tell her missing my graduation was unacceptable, but instead I said quietly, "Can you please share it with me? I really want to hear." From that day on, Rachel started opening up slowly and carefully. She told me about the constant pressure from Aunt Lisa, her mother, who piled so many responsibilities onto Rachel and her sister Sarah. Between taking care of the kids, managing the household, and the unspoken family conflicts, Rachel felt trapped. She wasn't free to live her own life or even express her true feelings. "We always have to hold it all in," Rachel admitted, her voice trembling. "Sometimes I just wish I could scream or break free, but I'm scared it'll only make things worse for Mom." I listened, trying to absorb everything she was saying. It was the first time I realized that Rachel's story wasn't just about missing my graduation. It was about a long chain of hurt and pressure that I had never seen or considered. But even though I tried to understand, I still had many questions. Why didn't they tell anyone in advance? Why did they leave everyone worried? Why did their silence create such a wide gap between us? I started seeing the cracks in the perfect family picture I'd always believed in. Life moved on, but our family ties grew weaker. Family gatherings became rare, and every meeting was filled with tension. Words left unspoken silences that stretched too long. They built a wall between me and the rest of them. Even though I was still physically with my family, I felt more alone than ever. Then one day I got a message from Rachel. "We need to meet." There's something important I have to tell you. I was unsure what to expect, but deep down, I knew this could be a turning point. The day Rachel asked to meet felt heavy with anticipation. I wasn't sure if I was preparing myself for reconciliation or for another round of conflict. Either way, I knew I couldn't avoid this any longer. I agreed, telling her to pick a quiet place where we could talk without interruptions. We met at a small, quiet cafe downtown. The air was thick with unspoken tension as I waited for her to arrive. When Rachel finally walked in, she looked different, softer, but tired, almost fragile. Her eyes held a mixture of guilt and fear that I hadn't seen before. She sat down slowly and took a deep breath as if gathering all her courage. "Thank you for meeting me," she started quietly. "I owe you an explanation and maybe even an apology." I nodded, my heart pounding with nervous hope. "About graduation day, she said we weren't just late or careless. There's more going on than you realize. Mom and Aunt Lisa have been at odds for months, and it's been tearing the family apart." Her voice cracked, and I saw tears welling up. They've been fighting over everything: money, who's responsible for what, and even things that don't make sense to me. It's like they're trying to control each other's lives. The tension spilled over to us cousins, and honestly, it's been unbearable. I swallowed hard, trying to process what she was telling me. It explained the cold shoulders, the awkward silences, the mysterious absence of my family members on my big day. But it didn't erase the hurt I felt. Rachel continued. "That morning, Aunt Lisa called us last minute and told us not to meet with everyone else at 7:30, like planned. She said it was better if we met directly at the stadium because she didn't want to cause a scene or make anyone uncomfortable." Her hands trembled slightly as she pushed a stray lock of hair behind her ear. We all thought it was weird, but we didn't question her. We trusted her to handle things. But then she hesitated. When we got there, the parking was a nightmare. We drove around for hours trying to find a spot. It was chaos. I remembered her excuse from that day, but hearing it now from her lips felt different, almost real. We couldn't get out of the car to look for parking because my mom was with us. She refused to leave the car alone, scared something would happen. I didn't want to abandon her. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I know it sounds like an excuse. I feel like I let you down." But I was stuck. Her vulnerability caught me off guard. I wanted to comfort her, but anger still simmered beneath the surface. "So, you missed my graduation because of family drama and parking problems?" I asked, my voice shaking slightly. She nodded, wiping her tears. "It wasn't just parking. It was everything else. The fights, the pressure, the exhaustion. I was overwhelmed. But when we finally got to your party, I should have apologized. I should have said something, anything. But I was too embarrassed and scared. The silence between us was heavy. I never meant to hurt you," Rachel said softly. "I love you. I'm proud of you. I was broken." That conversation marked a shift. For the first time, I saw Rachel not as the crying cousin or a distant family member, but as a person fighting her own battles. It didn't erase my pain, but it made space for empathy. We agreed to try and rebuild what had been damaged, piece by fragile piece. As we parted ways that afternoon, I felt a mix of relief and sadness. Family is complicated, messy, and often unpredictable, but maybe there was still hope. The days after my conversation with Rachel were strange. A part of me wanted to believe that everything was on the path to healing, but another part stubbornly clung to the sting of betrayal and neglect. How could they have missed the one day I'd been working toward for years? How could they act like nothing happened, like the hurt I felt was invisible? I kept replaying that morning in my mind, the empty seats, the absence of Rachel and her family where they were supposed to be, the look on my brother's face when I asked where they were, the silence that fell like a heavy curtain. Even now, the memory burned. The way they arrived late to my party without a single word of apology, as if their presence alone made up for everything. The way Rachel barged into conversations, taking over almost as if trying to erase the awkwardness by being loud and present. But it only made me feel more isolated. I wanted to lash out, but the words caught in my throat. My family had a way of turning things around so quickly, making me feel like I was the one overreacting, the one who couldn't let go. One evening, I sat alone in my apartment, scrolling through pictures from graduation day. Photos of me in my cap and gown, surrounded by family, except those missing seats, haunted me. I noticed little things I hadn't before: the forced smiles, the distant looks, the subtle glances between certain relatives that spoke volumes. I texted my mom, trying to reach out to find some comfort. "Mom, can we talk? I'm still hurting from everything that happened." Her reply was quick, but lukewarm. "I know, honey. It was a tough day for everyone. Tough for everyone. I felt invisible." That night, I couldn't sleep. The silence in my room was deafening. I kept thinking about what Rachel said about the fights, the pressure, the exhaustion. But what about me? Who was fighting for me? The next family gathering was a few days later, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to face them. My mom tried to be cheerful, but her eyes avoided mine. My brother was quieter than usual, probably still embarrassed about the drama. Rachel approached me cautiously. "Can we try to move forward?" she asked. I wanted to say yes, I really did. But trust isn't rebuilt overnight. "We have to," I whispered, "for all of us." Still, the air was thick with tension. The wounds were raw, and beneath the surface, old resentment simmered. Later that night, I lay awake feeling torn between anger and longing. I loved my family, but I also needed to protect myself. How could I celebrate my achievements when those closest to me seemed to undermine them? The line between love and pain blurred. I realized then that family isn't always the safe place we hope it will be. Sometimes it's the hardest battlefield of all. Days turned into weeks, and though the physical distance between us during family events lessened, the emotional chasm seemed to grow wider. The awkward silences at dinners, the sidelong glances, the unspoken grudges, they all formed an invisible wall. I wasn't sure anyone wanted to break down. One afternoon, my mom invited me over to talk. I felt a flicker of hope, but also a weight of dread pressing down on my chest. When I arrived, the house was quiet, too quiet. Mom was sitting in the living room, eyes red-rimmed as if she had been crying. "I've been thinking a lot about your graduation day," she began, her voice shaky. "I wish things had been different." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "But you have to understand," she said, "this family, it's complicated. There's a lot of history, a lot of hurt. It wasn't just about parking or showing up. It's deeper than that." I looked at her, searching for answers. "Rachel has been struggling," Mom continued. "She feels like she's constantly fighting for recognition, for respect. Sometimes she lashes out not because she wants to hurt you, but because she's scared." Scared. The word echoed in my mind. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that beneath all the chaos, there was love. But the pain I felt wasn't just about fear or misunderstandings. It was about feeling like I was on the outside of my own family's circle. Later that week, I decided to reach out to my brother. He was quieter than ever, and I sensed the burden he carried, the uncomfortable position of being caught between sides. We met for coffee, and after some small talk, I asked, "What really happened that day?" He sighed deeply. "I don't know, honestly. I think they didn't want to admit they messed up. Rachel kept saying there was no parking, that they had no choice, but it didn't make sense. I saw them driving around before the ceremony started." He looked away, ashamed. I felt bad because I didn't do anything to fix it. And after the party, it was like they just wanted to pretend it never happened. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. We all wanted it to be perfect. I guess sometimes family disappoints the most. That night, I sat alone and reflected on everything, the missed moments, the broken promises, the hidden resentments. I realized this was not just about one day or one event. It was about years of unspoken tensions, of expectations unmet, and voices unheard. The graduate's triumph felt hollow without the family I had hoped to share it with fully. But maybe healing would begin with forgiveness, not for them, but for myself. As I closed my eyes, a fragile hope stirred inside me. Maybe someday the fractures beneath the surface could be mended. But for now, I needed to find peace within, even if the family I longed for was still just out of reach. The days after that conversation with my brother felt heavier than before. I carried a swirl of emotions, hurt, confusion, disappointment, but also a strange, reluctant understanding. Sometimes family is complicated beyond repair, tangled in patterns we don't fully see until it's too late. One evening, a few weeks later, I got a message from Rachel. My heart skipped. After all the silence and distance, she wanted to talk. I hesitated, but decided to meet her at a small cafe near campus. When I saw her, she looked exhausted, like the fight inside her had worn her down. "I'm sorry," she said, immediately, voice cracking. "I never meant to hurt you. I was embarrassed, frustrated, and I handled everything wrong." Her eyes were wet, and for the first time in a long time, I saw vulnerability instead of defensiveness. I felt like no one cared about how much this meant to you, she confessed. And I didn't know how to be there for you without making it worse. I reached out and took her hand. I needed you there, not just physically, but emotionally. That's what hurt the most. She nodded, tears spilling over. I want to make it right, she whispered. That conversation wasn't a magical fix. We didn't suddenly become the close family I dreamed of. But it was a start, an opening to healing that had long been blocked by pride and pain. The party they threw for me later wasn't perfect, but it was honest. We laughed nervously, shared awkward apologies, and slowly the weight of resentment began to lift. I realized that sometimes love isn't about grand gestures or flawless moments. Sometimes it's about showing up messy, flawed human and trying anyway. In the months since graduation, I've learned to set boundaries and protect my heart, but also to forgive not just others, but myself. My family isn't perfect. They stumble and hurt each other in ways that leave scars. But beneath it all, I still see glimpses of the people who love me, even if imperfectly. Graduating with my master's was one of the proudest moments of my life. The people who showed up mattered deeply, but so did my own strength to carry on no matter what. As I stand at the threshold of this new chapter, I hold on to hope that someday our family might find its way back to each other. Until then, I'll keep moving forward with the lessons I've learned etched into my heart.